Troglodyte warning. National treasure Stephen Fry has weighed in on how social media has made us all miserable, polarized, and just kind of soiled the discourse. So let's get straight into the video.
Yes, I was very excited and optimistic, juiced up about the whole thing. Not Facebook. I always absolutely hated Facebook. Never trusted or liked it at all. But Twitter, I just thought, wow, it's wonderful. It's like a beautiful swimming hole, beautiful river where you can all swim, and it's taking us to marvelous places, and it's bridging different sides like a river can, and it's just gorgeous and fertilizing the world. And what happened, not with Twitter straight away, but what happened with Facebook, and what was obviously that they built up an enormous user base, and yet it was free. So they had to have advertising. And advertising was going to monetize the entire system. And so they needed clicks and eyeballs. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they sat down cynically and indeed evilly to do this. They just, in fact, the sort of task they gave their algorithm in order to get these clicks, these eyeballs, was maximize engagement. Just two words: maximize engagement. In other words, send to the user content that will engage them. Engage. It's a simple, nice word. And I don't think anybody.
But that's the thing. It doesn't matter if it was cynical or they tried to create division. That was the consequence. That was the end point. And people are only waking up to it now. The fact that a big proportion why we are so divided, so polarized, is social media, but also it's the inequality people face in society, where you have people at the bottom who have very little and people at the top with all the wealth. So it's this relationship, this toxic cocktail of deep inequality in places like America, the UK, other countries that are also seeing these kind of reactionary far right kind of resurgence to the far right, which has been fueled by economic inequality and social media. This is the position we're in now. And they both have a massive influence on our situation.
Predicted. No psychiatrist wrote, or psychologist rather, wrote an article. No sociologist wrote an article that I ever saw at the beginning of this saying this is dangerous. To maximize engagement means to maximize hatred, resentment, envy, anger, dislike, fear, all the things. The Pandora's box of bad spirits flew out, and the engagement was maximized. Totally maximized, and the more it was maximized, the more and more and more, and on came this sudden thing that what the French call ressentiment, that whole mixture of fear and resentment and hatred, and a desire to put down people you perceive to be your enemies, and a kind of hate weeks everywhere in the Orwellian sense. That this was fantastic for advertising. It absolutely made billions and billions, untold billions. And the more they made, the more they wanted to make it. And even though they were told, even though supposedly progressive and decent figures who can sleep at night, like Nick Clegg, were told, they still carried on. They still said, it's not our fault. They still said, we're not a media publisher. We're a platform.
Yeah, famously, Nick Clegg wrote a blog on his blog about how social media, it takes two to tango. And obviously it does, there is an audience. But these platforms are omnipotent. You can't escape Facebook. You can't escape Twitter, social media, YouTube, Google. They are such a present part of our lives. And the idea that you can kind of escape them and be like, not be on Facebook in a way. I mean, yeah, you can, but you can connect to people from university or school, workplaces. The idea that it's just, people can just click off out of the matrix. No, so much of our life and world is online now. And it really does take responsibility away from YouTube, Google, Facebook, Twitter, and the fact that, oh no, It's the market. That's it. Engagement. Above all else, above the mental health of young people, above social cohesion, above democracy, above actually having the truth told, misinformation. Again, Zuckerberg is getting rid of fact checking. It's insane. It's insane that people aren't backlashing against this. Like, where's the backlash? I mean, truly dark times we live in.
Form. So none of the laws that you in your radio and your colleagues on the Times newspaper have to obey, or none of the codes of practice and protocols and ethics that are second nature to journalists, none of those apply in something which
Yeah, and that's a massive oversight. That's where we just did assume. And I'm sure there were sociologists and journalists who were kind of preempting what social media became, because it is just based on clicks and engagement, no matter how extreme. And at a certain point, YouTube lends to this, and any social platform. To get noticed, you have to be more extreme. You have to push out more extreme kind of titles, thumbnails, have more extreme opinions to stand out with the crowd. And you could argue that's somehow inherent to it, but you have to react against that and go, okay, how do we deal with this? Not just say this is inevitable and this is good for business, which it is. How do we actually moderate this, and how do we have some kind of oversight of where we're going? Because this is not going to a good place. In 10 years, if we can continue on this trajectory, where the hell are we going to be?
which people now get 80 to 85% of all their news, but it doesn't count. And nobody has called them out because they're all afraid. They're terribly afraid of the enormous power that, and Zuckerberg is beginning to flex.
I mean, some in the EU, they're trying to do stuff with Amazon, for example, but they are too big. That's the thing. Facebook is too big now, and Zuckerberg is cozying up to Trump, which is going to make him more powerful. Google, too big. They own YouTube. We should have done this 10 years ago. This should have been, but again, hindsight is a beautiful thing. But now there needs to be pressure on these people because they kind of do control so much of the discourse. Who wins elections? You have Cambridge Analytica in 2016. You have election interference with Russian bots. So much of right-wing content and engagement is driven by Russia and bots. How do we deal with this? No, but again, people are too scared. Like, Keir Starmer knows it's a big battle he has to face. He's already facing the right-wing media. So facing the biggest companies, the biggest, most powerful companies in the world, he kind of has no chance, really.
It more than he ever has. Musk has gone off in his own way, which we can all agree. I had a very good joke yesterday. Someone said, Elon Musk is not a Nazi. All right? Nazis made really good cars.
Don't put that on Twitter. He'll find you. He'll find you,
Oh
Stephen.
my God. My God, he will. No, I left Twitter the day he bought it.
Did you?
Absolutely, yeah, I left then. And it's saddened me. I had 13 million viewers because I had been an early user, and I had, my name had been connected with it in the early days. And the beautiful swimming hole where we'd all made friends with each other and it was all fun. We suddenly saw turds floating on the surface and cut at the soles of our feet on, old rusting shopping carts on the bottom and broken glass. And it is like our rivers. It is like a river. I mean, a river is a very good way of looking at it. It's a river that communicates. It's a river that travels. And like our rivers in Britain, it is contaminated. It's polluted. And, they've polluted the cultural water that our children drink. You have children, you mentioned, and you must worry about the air they breathe, the cultural air they breathe, that it is polluted, it's contaminated, and it's you can't.
Massively contaminated. We're seeing studies now that it's deeply affecting people's mental health, both young children, teenagers, adults, and the biggest component is the misinformation. Like, this would work if people were focusing on facts, statistics, verifiable science. But you have on one hand people who do want to engage with the science, and yeah, they'll make mistakes. And then you have people on the other hand completely deny climate change, opposed to universities, anti-intellectuals. They don't like the consensus on trans issues. They don't like the consensus on, well, so much of science that is unequivocal. But they argue, they have their alternative facts, fake news, bespoke reality. And that's the biggest obstacle we face. Because how do you argue with somebody who doesn't even believe in science, essentially, or doesn't, or thinks that climate change isn't real because of reasons? Like, they're not backing this up by science. They're backing it up by an inconvenient truth that it will undermine the bottom line of fossil fuel companies. That's it. I mean, Murdoch famously has been muddying the water on science, the scientific consensus. And that's what we face. It's an information war. Again, how do you argue against misinformation when they don't even believe it's misinformation? They're telling you that climate science is wrong. Impossible situation.
Stop them breathing it because it's everywhere. It's what the culture now is. And nobody has the courage to do anything about it, including me to some extent. I mean, I suppose I could, if I could be like, Clarkson, not Jeremy, the slave, the abolitionist, the one who started the whole thing in the 18th century. He travelled 1,000 miles a week by horse and cart back and forth between Cambridge and London and the north and so on, persuading people, telling them about slavery and what it really was. He and people attacked him. He was a genuinely extraordinary man who changed the world. And I try and think, well, should I now devote the rest of my life to fighting? I'd be like St. Paul in a way. He started off as Saul of Tarsus persecuting Christians, ended up a Christian. I'd be a reverse version. I started up as an absolute lover of this new religion, and now I want to destroy it. Well, destroy is a bit strong, but I want it to be controlled. And of course, the argument is the moment I say that, I'm apparently an enemy of free speech. But it's like,
I don't think anyone listens.
Is a gardener an enemy of free growth because they do a bit of weeding? That's all I'm saying. We need to weed. We need to make the growth strong and healthy so that everybody can enjoy the garden, because it's otherwise a mess.
Well,
anyway, gosh, I don't know how we...
That's a beautiful point, because people on the right cynically say, oh, by moderating and having terms of service that, crack down on misinformation, it's censorship. No, it's not censorship to kind of crack down on lies, misinformation, disinformation. It is trimming the garden. It's mowing the lawn. It's maintaining democracy, maintaining truth. And obviously that goes against them on the trans issue, the climate change issue, immigration issues, because the truth, the facts, the evidence is against them. So they have to manufacture their own facts. They have to muddy the water, and they have to undermine democracy because often they're against it. So hit the like button if you want to fight against the right-wing misinformation. The world we live in now is all about what is true, what is not, and bespoke reality is something that is so hard to fight because we're dealing with hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.